One of the things that I learned when I was organizing, you show up in a neighborhood and your initial instinct is to tell people what they should be interested in. Instead of spending the first 6 months listening and finding out what they actually are interested in.
Ethnography is a method, it's a way of writing, it's an orientation to a world based on personal relationships and the representation of that world.
I work as a photographer, a videographer, and an ethnographer. And when I say ethnographer, maybe I'm thinking more about this very careful and systematic attention to people's lives and the meanings they make.
To be not just an academic sort of internal inside baseball aspect to it, but a public mission, whether that's a public mission of education or some form of advocacy. It was more collaborative than my traditional ethnographies, where I go to the field site, it's very clear where the field site ends, and then I write about it sort of solo. The people in this were completely involved at every step. People are trying to see how can we use ethnography in order to understand and change things.
Ethnographers need to be doing something that is not studying them, that is much more about a collaboration, where the people who are the ones we are interviewing and studying are co-creators of the construction of meaning, and that it is a relationship that doesn't end when the study is over.
Participant observation or user observation, getting in the actual context of people's experience, allows you to find out what actually happens as opposed to what people think happens. The importance of that really is when you're designing for a solution, it's not only important to know what people do, but it's important to know how they do it. So getting into the actual context allows you to learn enough to inform how to design.
So when I went out on my first observation, I had no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I was supposed to go out there, observe, and learn something. This was a project for book superstores, so I was going to a Borders. And at first I was just going through the motions because I know book superstores. I've been going to them all my life. I love spending time in bookstores. And so I went through the motions and I saw what I expected to see. There were people hanging out in front of the store, by the magazines. There was a crowd by the cafe, and there were people in there from groups of 1 to many, reading, chatting, eating, just pretty much hanging out and having a good time. But the people who actually went to Borders to look for books, their experience wasn't so positive. I was walking through the aisles, and you could see them standing on tiptoe, trying to read the titles on the top shelf, or crouching down low to read the ones on the floor. And it looked pretty uncomfortable. So it was once I started actually observing the environment and the interactions, as opposed to remembering things from my past experiences, that I realized that Borders is not designed for browsers. And so that's the thing with user observations. You have to forget everything you ever knew about whatever context or whatever content you're learning about and go in with new eyes. And when that happens, you can actually see things that you never noticed before or never realized could have been there. And that will help you come up with new solutions, because you can't come up with new concepts from old observations.
So this practice of observing people in their natural environments to understand their needs is called ethnography. At the time, it was an academic practice. It grew out of anthropology. Lucy Suchman was the first one to apply it to industry. So even today, not everybody uses ethnography. Most companies will try to understand their customers' needs by asking them directly, using tools like focus groups or surveys. But asking people to tell you what they want gets you only so far. As the anthropologist Margaret Mead said, what people say, what people do, and what people say they do are entirely different things. When people do their jobs or just any ordinary activity, much of what you do just becomes invisible to you. It's just what you do. But if you watch people, you start to realize a lot of times people are working around their tools. And it's these gaps or problems people work around that are opportunities for innovation. The thing is, a lot of times when you point them out to people, they'll say, well, sure, it's obvious that's a problem. But they don't think to tell you about it when you ask. To notice it, you have to get out and watch. So I like to think of my job as an ethnographer like this. You sit and you watch the chaos that is human behavior, And if you're patient and you watch for a while and you have a naive state of mind, you start to notice insights that are obvious after you point them out. You start to notice the hidden obvious.